Welcome to the Menagerie. Chapter 1, The Job Posting. The email arrived in Morgan Harper's inbox on a Tuesday morning, wedged between a promotional discount for bulk cat food and an automated reminder that her student loan payment was past due. She almost deleted it out of habit, but paused when the subject line caught her eye. Seeking a caretaker for exotic creatures. High pay, immediate start. Her brow furrowed. She didn't remember applying for any jobs recently, especially not one with a title this strange. Curiosity won out over caution, and she clicked the email. The message was concise, almost cryptically so. Do you have experience handling animals? Are you calm under pressure? Seeking someone with an open mind and strong problem-solving skills. Housing provided, NDA required, details available upon request. Below the text was a single link labeled Apply Now. Morgan leaned back in her chair and stared at the screen. This smelled like a scam. Maybe not a Prince from Nigeria scam, but something close. Still, the promise of high pay lingered like bait on a hook. It had been a rough few months. Her job at the animal shelter had ended abruptly when funding was cut, and she'd been picking up shifts at a pet store just to scrape by. At this point, she was almost ready to move back in with her dad and her stepmom. Well, maybe she wasn't quite that desperate. Yet. Against her better judgment, she clicked the link. The application form was suspiciously bare bones. Name, age, a short summary of her experience with animals. She hesitated, glancing around her tiny apartment where the kitchen sink overflowed with dirty dishes and a cat lounged on a stack of unpaid bills. What do you think, Jarvis? She muttered, glancing at the chubby striped cat sprawled across the desk. He flicked his tail, blinked lazily, completely uninterested in her existential crisis. Morgan sighed. Yeah, okay, what's the worst that could happen? 30 minutes later, the form was submitted, and she'd mostly forgotten by the time that she'd made lunch. The reply came less than an hour later. Congratulations, Miss Harper. Your application has been accepted. Please report to 124 Borough Street at 8 p.m. tonight for orientation. It was signed the curator. That was all. Morgan stared at the email, her sandwich halfway to her mouth. Accepted? That fast? No interview? No phone call? Her pulse quickened with unease. Maybe she should ignore this. But the address was local, and a quick search confirmed it was a warehouse downtown. Jarvis stretched and meowed and promptly fell off the desk with a thud. Morgan sighed. Yeah, all right, I'll go. But if I get murdered, you're on your own. The warehouse loomed against the darkening sky, like something out of a noir film. Its weathered brick exterior lit by a single buzzing street lamp. The door had no sign, just the numbers 124 stenciled in black above the frame. Morgan hesitated, one hand on the handle. Maybe this was a terrible idea. But before she could turn away, the door swung open on its own. Miss Harper. The voice belonged to a man in his 50s, with a lined face and sharp, assessing eyes. He was dressed in a dark three-piece suit, crisp despite the dust that clung to the air. His presence was quiet, but commanding, like he was used to being listened to without question. Yes, Morgan stammered. That's me. Follow me, please. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of earth, iron, and something she couldn't quite place, like the crisp static before a lightning strike. The man led her through a narrow corridor that opened onto a cavernous space lit by rows of industrial lamps. At first glance, It looked like a cross between a high-tech research facility and a Victorian menagerie. Rows of enforced enclosures lined the walls, each one built differently, as if designed to accommodate something highly specific. Thick glass, reinforced steel, iron bars etched with strange curling symbols. In one, a sleek, scaled creature slithered along the glass, its body shimmering like an oil slick under the lights. In another, a pair of glowing red eyes blinked from the dark, followed by a soft rustle of wings too large for the enclosure. "What is this place?" Morgan asked, her voice hushed. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured towards a massive tank set near a far wall. The glass stretched nearly 20 feet high and was surrounded by thick steel reinforcements. It was filled with dark water that rippled faintly under the surface. Morgan stepped closer, peering into the depths. It looked empty. "This one's a bit shy," the man said from behind her. As if in response to her question, something massive surged upwards from the darkness. A serpentine neck broke the surface, water cascading down sleek, pebbled skin. A head the size of a car loomed into view, its large, dark eyes locking with hers. If she didn't know any better, she'd say she was looking at the Loch Ness Monster, or something close enough to what she had seen on TV that Morgan's breath caught in her throat. Stumbling backwards with a gasp, Morgan slammed into something cold and solid. A low, grinding noise filled the air, like the sound of ancient stone shifting against itself. A deep red glow flickered in the darkness of a cage that she had backed into. It was faint at first, like embers buried under ash, but then a pair of eyes ignited like twin coals. The scraping sound of the stone echoed as something moved forward. A small voice in the back of Morgan's head whispered, "Gargoyle." Wings, cracked and weathered, unfurled slightly behind it, dislodging dust. Its face was sharp, angular, and carved with a permanent scowl. The red glow in its eyes pulsated like a heartbeat. It was alive, but also not. Morgan barely had time to process it before something else stirred in the distance. Another cage rattled violently, its heavy steel bars bending outward as something huge pressed against them. A low, guttural growl rumbled through the air, thick with menace. Morgan caught the briefest glimpse of scales the size of dinner plates shifting in the darkness. To her left, a humanoid figure clung to the ceiling of its cage, its elongated limbs wrapped around the bars. It had too many eyes, too many teeth, and it was grinning at her. Then there was the whispering in the air. It wasn't loud, but it was everywhere. Morgan turned sharply, scanning the cages for the source, but she saw nothing, only shifting shadows and the occasional gleam of movement. "Okay," she grasped, hands to her knees. I need a second. What was that? Who are you? And where am I?" The man checked his watch, completely unfazed. "Take your time. That was what you applied for. I am the curator, and this is the menagerie." Morgan took a deep breath, then another, then straightened and fixed him with a shaky look. The curator smoothed his coat lapels and spoke again. "The job pays $250,000 per year, with housing included." Morgan blinked, the numbers rattling around her brain. She was struggling to process. 200 and... She swallowed. "Per year?" "Yes." She hesitated. Then, "I accept." No more questions? Absolutely not, Morgan said quickly. That amount of money, and I'll figure it out. The man smiled. Welcome to the Menagerie, Miss Harper. You may move in tomorrow and start Thursday.